Here we are. Another day, another video, and what am I titling this one? Love your journey. I mean, clearly, you already know what the title is because it's in the title. But this is actually a funny video to make because I had actually made this video last week along with another video, which goes into my whole trying to prep more content, put out more content. And it's something to very, very important when making videos is make sure you look at all the details close up, because I made this video and I realized that I had eaten lunch right before, and part of the journey is learning to rewatch your entire video, because I realized that the entire time I had some stuff stuck in my teeth. So that was really cool. But welcome back. Welcome and welcome back, actually, is the better way to put it. So for all of those who are new here, my name is Chris. I'm a freelance photographer and content creator in my free time. And this is more so a story time video. There's anybody who does want to watch this is just more so my background. I feel like it's important in creating content to know who you are watching and where I kind of came from in this journey. So this is just going to be a lot more of me talking to you. And I feel like that's important because everybody has a different journey in the process of photography and videography and content creation. And, it is not something that I went to school for at all. It's not something I do full-time at all. It's just something I'm very passionate about. And so I wanted to create a video to actually talk about how I got to where I am today. I never started as the kid who, wanted to pursue photography. But I always found myself just taking photos. It's actually a funny story, which I'll try to make a little bit shorter because it's not the bulk of this video. But I had wanted a camera when I was in 7th grade. It was the first time I ever wanted a camera for Christmas. And I remember my brother and my mom going to a Black Friday sale and getting me that camera, to which my brother actually decided that he wanted that camera and that he would give me his old digital point and shoot camera. It was either a Canon or a Nikon, like Coolpix, something like that. Karma's funny there because he actually dropped it in a lake a few months later when he was on vacation. So that's just a funny moment. But anyway, how did I get into it? I didn't, take any photography classes or even, get super excited about it when I was in high school or anything like that. And I guess my photography journey didn't really start until college. It was I started college in 2011, and I was always the person who every time I was out and about, I took photos on my phone, just loved it. I went to school in Philadelphia and would just skateboard around everywhere, take photos of everything I could, but never really had a true camera. So fast forward this progress into my junior year where I was in the startup space. My friends and I had actually launched a company that was focused around food delivery around our college campus. And we had, some of the team members had actually built an app where you could order food. And where is this all irrelevant background going, right? We realized that one of the biggest things that people wanted when ordering food was pictures of food. None of us had any photography experience. And so, I was about 19, 20 years old at this point, and I decided, hey, I want to, get my first camera. I'm 100% down to do this. Love taking photos. Never really owned a professional camera. So I ended up getting a Rebel SLR, 7, something like that. It was a Canon, to which slowly progressed my obsession. And I found myself taking this camera absolutely everywhere, taking photos of everything, as well as for, this business where I was taking photos of food. And I'll admit, when I first started, I was absolute trash. And we actually were able to hire somebody to help kind of coach me, with, plating food and making everything look presentable and learning more about lighting. And the one thing that you have to take note is I absolutely love food truck food, which was a lot of the businesses that we were working with at the time. Food truck food is often coming either pre-wrapped or wrapped up when you get it, or in styrofoam containers. So this was not the most plateable, beautifully presented food. So it was, even when I got good at it, it was never something that was incredible. But where did this progress? A lot of practice, a lot of learning how to make these photos better, and it started to compile, and I started to love doing this and more and more. And so probably about a year in, I ended up getting my first professional full frame camera, which I've mentioned multiple times on this channel before, which was my Canon 6D Mark II. And my photos just started to take off. I was doing a lot better. I was working with a lot of these businesses, and as our business expanded throughout Philadelphia, I started getting to work with not only our vendors for our business, but on my own, because I was being asked to take photos of their food for their websites, for menus, for things that they wanted to use for print material. And that was kind of the start of the snowball effect of getting into this. And then shortly after that, through some friends, I ended up landing my first long-term client, which was a pizza restaurant in Philadelphia. They did pizza, Italian foods, just very Italian restaurant, drinks, the whole 9 yards. And that just really catapulted doing so much focus in food photography. And I got to travel to all their locations in like the tri-state area. And that's when people started seeing the work that I was doing. And I actually moved into a new business, still in the startup space, which was around some supplements and different types of products, where I started to get into product photography. Because being in the startup space, you don't have a ton of money for marketing agencies, so you do it all your own. So I then got versed in product photography, and that started taking off more and more with the business that we were growing for our own photography and own marketing materials. And then I started getting reached out to by a local agency in Philadelphia that did more supplement work, things like that. Started getting to work with people just across all of their clientele in a variety of industries, working with, individuals for modeling the products, let alone product photos, anything like that. And so I really found my niche in product photography and food photography is my two favorite things. Did some portrait photography here and there, but it was never like my primary focus. I loved working with products and the versatility and, food. The great thing about food photography is, depending on what client it's for, is if it's smaller businesses, you always get a free meal at the end of it. And as somebody who's in the startup space, food was always a great option in addition to payment. But where did that kind of lead me? As I continued going through the startup phase and doing a lot of my freelance work all across Philadelphia and the tri-state area, I ended up moving into a new career full-time, which ultimately really started to supplement my income and kind of change my life, which was a really, really great experience. That being said, I did start to dwindle on the amount of photography work that I was doing, because I was more so focused on my day-to-day. And I'd say the biggest problem for me personally was, as somebody who had for a while carried their camera everywhere because I was doing it for part of my day-to-day within the startup work, I stopped carrying my camera everywhere because all I had was this massive Canon 6D Mark II, which was a brick. This thing was huge. And where did that leave me? It left me honestly just kind of stepping away from photography for a few years, until I decided that I really just missed it and I loved doing photography, and it was just something I was passionate about. And while I kept that one restaurant client for a few years and worked with the marketing agency, that was, a once a month, twice a month type thing, where I wasn't just doing it for myself. And so I want to say probably around 2023, when I ended up moving out of Philadelphia, I ended up selling my Canon and picking up my first Fujifilm camera. And I do want to preface this with, before selling my Canon, I had actually bought a Ricoh GR3X, which I've reviewed that before. I don't have that camera anymore, but that helped kind of spark things. And I wanted to do more, but wanted to get back to the interchangeable lens experience. And so I picked up a Fuji X-T50 after selling my Canon. Well, that started a massive snowball. And so I'm gonna intro here of like what I would recommend to anybody who's either getting back into photography or getting into photography is start small and learn your camera. I ended up picking up this Fuji and then picking up a Sony ZV-E10 for video because I wanted to start, getting into this whole vlogging experience. And that snowballed, but I'll get into that in a little bit. And I ended up picking up the Sony actually because I wanted to start doing video. And it was more so a challenge that I had with my wife because she had always wanted to get into content creation and, vlogging because she loves watching vlogs and loves the idea of creating and working with brands. And I started this whole channel as a testament to show her it's possible. And I fell in love with the process and I love doing this, and I've created a lot of content and I'm going to keep creating more content. And that's kind of how I got into this whole thing. But dialing back to the cameras of don't keep buying. I mean, I went through the Fuji X-T50. I ended up with an X-H2. I ended up with an X-E3, an X-T3, an X-T5. I've owned pretty much every line aside from GFX, the XS line, and the X Pro line. But I do have my eyes on an X Pro 3 if they don't come out with an X Pro 4 in the next year or two. But then I ended up having all these cameras, swapping in and out, going back and forth, selling my Sony entirely, and found myself starting to talk to a few more local businesses about doing work, which, I was doing this solely for myself, solely for fun, and realized that if I wanted to get back into what I consider professional photography, that I wanted, not needed, a full frame camera. And so I ended up selling some of my Fuji gear. I picked up my A7C II, which is what I'm filming on now, and selling a lot of the other Fuji gear. And now I'm down to a fairly simple setup. I have my A7C II, which is what I'm filming on right now. I had a ZV-E1, which is what I filmed previous videos on. I ended up selling that ZV-E1 this past week, not because it was a bad camera, but because it didn't fit my everyday use case. And that's because I am a photographer by trade in what I do here, and I wanted a more photography-centric camera. So if anyone's gotten to this point, don't hate me because I know that Sony just dropped their A7 IV. I did pick up an A7 IV, which got a great deal on this. Didn't actually have to spend any money on this, which is always a nice situation, but I wanted the dual SD card slots. I wanted a more photography-centric body. And I also do volunteer work for photography with the SPCA, and I didn't want to burn out my main camera with burst shooting in volunteer work. I wanted to have a main camera for photography work. So I will be using the A7C II for my volunteer work and video work, and then I'll have the A7 IV for just photography specific work. And then from the Fuji standpoint, what I use all the time is actually just the X-E5 with two lenses, my Thypoc 35mm 1.4 and my Fujinon XF 35mm f2. Why I have two of the same lenses, that's another video for another time. But it has been a journey, and I just gotta say, the past 2 years that I've been getting back into photography, in the past really year that I've been doing this channel, has just been absolutely incredible for me. And so if anyone has made it to this point in the video, all I want to say is just do what you want for yourself. If you want to create content, go create content. I don't know how many people are going to view this video. I don't know how many people are going to care, but love the journey, the ups and downs, try different gear, find what you want, and just go have fun with it. So that's pretty much a wrap on this video, but appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're new here, once again, would love to have you join the journey and click that subscribe button if you want to. But if you're not new here, you came back again, thanks for coming. But have a great day, y'all. Peace.